From the Broadcast Center at BCIT's Burnaby Campus, this is All Talk Radio. You're listening to 1680 The Crow.
A very good Monday morning, and thank you for joining us. I'm Jag Roslali with your 10 o'clock news update on 1680 The Crow. Let's get right into it with our producer Jake McGrill, who has our top stories.
Thanks, Jag. We have a couple of big stories that we're chasing today. The first is there's a conference in downtown Vancouver for the launch of a new public safety coalition between retailers and some community groups to demand government action against the rising shoplifting rates across the province, especially violent shoplifting. We're also going to be covering the installation of some new basketball courts in Indigenous communities, both in the Lower Mainland and on Vancouver Island. We're also going to be keeping an eye on a couple of provincial announcements coming out of Victoria later this morning. And for our FDR later today, our very own Jocelyn Chappelle will be interviewing McGill researcher Vanessa Yaremcha about a couple of documents that she's found about the Salem witch trials. Back to you, Jag.
Thanks so much, Jake. On the eve of Halloween, a Port Coquitlam father has issued a stern warning to parents about inspecting their children's Halloween candy. His daughter had a close call when she almost choked on a piece of metal found in a sucker. In mid-September, Scott Leatham bought some suckers at a Dollarama in Pitt Meadows for his kids. His daughter abruptly stopped eating as something scratched and pricked her tongue. It resembled a rusty staple or a barbecue brush bristle. Leatham reported the incident to the company, which responded with a $10 gift card offer, claiming it was an isolated occurrence and closing their investigation. However, Leatham seeks accountability, not money, and believes the incident was not taken seriously. A group of big businesses, community groups, and stores think there's a big problem with street crime and violence in British Columbia. People are afraid to walk on the streets after shopping, workers worry about being attacked, and local stores are losing money due to theft. The president of London Drugs, Clint Malman, says this is a big problem. He believes the government needs to help protect employees and businesses. The government has started a $10.5 million fund to help small businesses pay for damage from vandalism, and it allows businesses to get money for fixing things that were damaged and for preventing more damage. This program will be managed by the BC Chamber of Commerce starting on November 22nd. Ontario's Chief Medical Health Officer, Dr. Kieran Moore, has said that this year's respiratory virus season is expected to be less challenging for the province and its hospitals than in previous years. From today onwards, all Ontario residents aged 6 months and up can get a free flu shot and an updated COVID-19 vaccine. Dr. Moore points out that getting vaccinated for both of these viruses is vital to ensure that our healthcare system doesn't get overwhelmed.
Well, it is safe and convenient to get them at the same time, and certainly that's what I'm doing at 1:30 today. It was easy to book the appointments. Plenty of appointments are available at your local pharmacy and what I found through local public health agencies.
New COVID-19 vaccines from Pfizer and Moderna were approved by Health Canada earlier this fall and are designed to target the XBB COVID-19 variant. Young Canadians are exhibiting heightened anxiety regarding personal debt and an increased tendency to miss bill payments this year, according to a recent survey conducted by Equifax Canada. Julie Kuzmic, Senior Compliance Officer, notes the mounting stress among Canadians due to rising interest rates and escalating credit card debt.
It certainly isn't a surprise to see that the anxiety level across Canadians around their personal finances is relatively high. And unfortunately, there is very much likely to be a link between those higher balances we're seeing on credit cards and that anxiety that people are feeling.
A Colorado judge is currently hearing the first arguments in a lawsuit brought by some voters who want to stop Donald Trump from being on the state's 2024 presidential ballot. Their lawyer, Sean Grimsley, used his opening remarks to talk about Trump's involvement in the January 6th U.S. Capitol attack.
Trump incited a violent mob to attack our Capitol to stop the peaceful transfer of power under our Constitution. That mob got within 40 feet of Vice President Pence after they chased him from the Senate floor. Trump incited a violent mob to attack our Capitol to stop the peaceful transfer of power under our Constitution. Trump incited a violent mob to attack our Capitol to stop the peaceful transfer of power under our Constitution. That mob got within 40 feet of Vice President Pence.
Moving on to your weather now, sunny conditions throughout the day with a high of 12 degrees.
everything is changing to digital. Everything is online. People aren't just waiting for the 6 o'clock news anymore. People want their news right now. They want to be able to go onto their smartphone, onto the internet, and see the news that they want to see.
Vancouver is growing at, a really rapid rate, the Lower Mainland even, and with the tools that we're given here, we're able to cover all of that.
Welcome to BCIT Magazine. I'm Radhika Sikakane.
In the program, they really leave it up to you. I mean, the help is there when you need it, figuring out how to use the programs like Premiere, Audition, and figuring out how to use the cameras. But it's up to you to sort of experiment and figure out what you can do when you go out in the field.
They brought candles and flowers to remember the student who lost her life yesterday.
Theresa May says the international community condemns Moscow.
They really make sure that you know the basics and you are able to put out a quality product.
I'm Brady Tretnero.
And I'm Radhika Sikakane. Thank you for tuning in to BCIT Magazine.
This is 1680 The Crow, and I'm Melanie Levesque. Today I'll be speaking with Jennifer Bonnell, a writer and associate professor at York University. She is a historian of Canadian public memory and environmental change throughout the 19th and 20th centuries. She recently published her book, Stewards of Splendor, A History of Wildlife and People in British Columbia. The book began as a 90-page report and grew over the course of several years into an in-depth look at wildlife histories in the province from 1774 until now. Jennifer, thank you for talking to me today, and let's get right into it. So to start, how did what initially began as a 90-page report become a full book?
I mean, the project got underway in 2018, and I began doing interviews in 2019, and I conducted about 80 interviews for the project. So I already knew that there was a lot of really wonderful content there. And then when I started to do some of the other research and recognized that the scope of the project really from the period of Indigenous history before 1770 right through to the present was going to be really hard to do any justice to in a 90-page report. I am also a historian, so I write book-length studies generally, so that's where I was comfortable with. And luckily, the wildlife branch and the director of wildlife that I was working with there, Jennifer Salakis, was just really open to the idea of a book-length project and patient with the deadlines.
One of the main focuses of your book is an understanding of wildlife histories through the perspective of Indigenous people and communities. What are some of the differences you noticed between studying wildlife histories from an Indigenous perspective when compared to researching it from a colonial perspective?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I think there's been quite a lot of histories of wildlife work from the colonial perspective. They tend to talk about the history of government wildlife work, the history of wildlife biologists and their efforts to both understand wildlife in the province. The rise of science and scientific wildlife management is a big part of that story. And sometimes those histories have extended to broader actors to include, the role of nonprofit organizations and land trusts. But often Indigenous people have really not been included in that story at all. If anything, they come up under concerns about conservation. If you're looking at, the history of salmon conservation, for example, federal fisheries officers used to put most of the burden of conservation upon Indigenous communities that were fishing, the in-river fisheries, which is the very end of the salmon migration. And instead of trying to regulate the commercial catch or the sport catch more heavily, they focused a lot, historically that is, of the regulation on those Indigenous communities. So when Indigenous people came up in these histories, they often came up as, these people aren't considering conservation. Just because of that colonial perspective on thinking about where these wildlife resources, who effectively owned them, and Indigenous people weren't given much thought in those histories. So I think taking it from an Indigenous perspective, and of course I'm not an Indigenous person, so I can't really do that, but acknowledging Indigenous perspectives here really means that you recognize the really deep past in this history. So you recognize that we're talking about thousands, if not tens of thousands of years of Indigenous occupation of the province, and deep relationships with wildlife that develops that often, what I argue in the book, had a strong emphasis on conservation, that Indigenous sort of cultivation of abundance of wildlife was something that Indigenous groups across the province did, whether they were working with fire to regenerate landscapes in the interests of wildlife, to attract wildlife, whether they were gardening in wetlands on the coast to make better habitat for waterfowl and fish in order to return to hunt and fish in those locations. So I think I'm really borrowing on a lot of the scholarly work that's been done in this area, and also the work of Indigenous knowledge keepers who have been describing these practices of cultivating wildlife abundance over these many thousands of years. So not only does the book begin there and really consider that deep past, it brings Indigenous perspectives throughout the entire book. So the role of Indigenous guardians in the present and just the resurgence of Indigenous authority in terms of wildlife management, especially in the North, is something that the book really delves into in the later chapters.
What is one fun fact that you got to include in your book that your audience will be surprised about?
I actually have a good one. So someone who helped me a lot in thinking about what to include in the book, his name is Rod Silver. He's included in the acknowledgments to the book. He's a retired wildlife biologist, and he used to be the director of the Habitat Conservation Trust Foundation. In any case, he said, you should really include Ogopogo. And so there's a small section of the book. I have these sort of profiles that are throughout the book, and this is a species profile. And I think it's called Is Ogopogo Wildlife? And it details the efforts that Rod remembered and that I was able to find verification for in the newspaper records of a particular director of wildlife who sought to protect the species and the habitat of Okanagan Lake. There was a stunt of people, I think they were filmmakers coming up from the U.S., and they wanted to drag the lake to see if they could find Ogopogo. And it would have just done untold damage, right, to not only Ogopogo, if Ogopogo's there, but a lot of other wildlife in the lake. And so he managed to include Ogopogo in the definition of wildlife for the province. It was only in the legislation for a few years, but it was there in order to stop that kind of activity. And so Ogopogo was officially wildlife in the province for a few years, and I really like that story. Details really the role of individuals, I think, who had to act quickly. In this case, a government wildlife biologist had to act quickly and in order to protect wildlife from the many threats that they face.
Were there any times when you felt you had taken on a task too large for just one person?
It was a lot. Yes, there certainly were. It was a real challenge. Like, I just had if you look, my husband was showing me, like, the back of the book is just like almost like a quarter of the book is all of the notes, all of the footnotes and all of the bibliography. So there's just so much content here. And I think that's another thing that the book serves, is it really gathers up a lot of those government and scientific reports and historical accounts and documents that they exist, right? They're there in the notes. Yeah. And there's just so much material to work with. I think when I was working with the early decades, it was a little easier because there just wasn't as much written. So I wasn't dealing with such a mountain of information. But writing the later chapters, writing the chapters that are more connected to the present, like the last 30, 40 years, it was just so challenging to determine what to include and what not to include, based on there was just so much to work with. And then this is where interviewees' memory also comes in, because people tend, the people I spoke with are speaking really about the last 40 years. So a good chunk of the book doesn't include any references from interviewees because it deals with a much earlier time period. And so I'd say the latter chapters were especially challenging to write because I was incorporating interviewees' reflections and comments, as well as just a mountain of scientific and government data and reports. Yeah. And how to still make it readable, right, for people, like, like trying to choose topics and arguments that people could make sense of.
Well, thanks for talking to me, Jennifer. I'll have to add that book to my list of stuff to read.
Okay, well, Melanie, thanks a lot.
That's the end of today's For the Record segment. Make sure to join us next time for more unique and inspiring voices on 1680 The Crow.
everything is changing to digital. Everything is online. People aren't just waiting for the 6 o'clock news anymore. People want their news right now. They want to be able to go onto their smartphone, onto the internet, and see the news that they want to see.
Vancouver is growing at, a really rapid rate, the Lower Mainland even, and with the tools that we're given here, we're able to cover all of that.
Welcome to BCIT Magazine. I'm Radhika Sikakane.
In the program, they really leave it up to you. I mean, the help is there when you need it, figuring out how to use the programs like Premiere, Audition, and figuring out how to use the cameras. But it's up to you to sort of experiment and figure out what you can do when you go out in the field.
They brought candles and flowers to remember the student who lost her life yesterday.
Theresa May says the international community condemns Moscow.
They really make sure that you know the basics and you are able to put out a quality product.
I'm Brady Tretnero.
And I'm Radhika Sikakane. Thank you for tuning in to BCIT Magazine.
Everything is changing to digital. Everything is online. People aren't just waiting for the 6 o'clock news anymore. People want their news right now. They want to be able to go onto their smartphone, onto the internet, and see the news that they want to see.
Vancouver is growing at, a really rapid rate, the Lower Mainland even, and with the tools that we're given here, we're able to cover all of that.
Welcome to BCIT Magazine. I'm Radhika Sikakane.
In the program, they really leave it up to you. I mean, the help is there when you need it, figuring out how to use the programs like Premiere, Audition, and figuring out how to use the cameras. But it's up to you to sort of experiment and figure out what you can do when you go out in the field.
They brought candles and flowers to remember the student who lost her life yesterday.
Theresa May says the international community condemns Moscow.
They really make sure that you know the basics and you are able to put out a quality product.
I'm Brady Tretanero.
And I'm Radhika Sikakane. Thank you for tuning in to BCIT Magazine.
From the Broadcast Center at BCIT's Burnaby Campus, this is All Talk Radio. You're listening to 1680 The Crow.
Good morning, this is Philip Kovacevic with your 1030 news headlines. Launching today is a new province-wide public safety coalition that brings public safety coalition that brings together community and business groups, citizens, and well-known BC retailers. The coalition seeks governments to work together and act without pause on the growing crime and violence crisis in communities across British Columbia. More and more British Columbians are afraid to walk their own streets and shopping districts. Employees are in fear of being assaulted at work, and local businesses are losing millions from brazen in-store theft that leads to higher prices for BC families. The scheduled presenters are Clint Malman, London Drugs, Karen Kawika from the Nanaimo Area Public Safety Association, Adam Jaffer, Metro Vancouver Crime, I'm Stoppers, Tanya Finley, Nelson Neighborhood Network. The location of the announcement is the atrium at 351 Abbott Street near Hastings Street from 11 to 12 p.m. People who are in need of affordable housing in the Kootenay region will soon be moving into a new 30-unit apartment complex in Sparwood. Located at 431 Pine Avenue, Timbers Landing will provide homes for people with moderate to low incomes, with a particular focus on families, single parents, seniors, and people living with disabilities. The project is the result of a partnership between the federal and provincial governments, the District of Sparwood, Columbia Basin Trust, New Commons Development, Tech and Elk Valley Family Society, which will operate the building. The building will open its doors to tenants in the weeks to come and includes 7 accessible units, along with all-electric low-carbon consumption features, such as heat pumps for combined heating and cooling, as well as integrated solar panel systems for helping to offset common area electricity. This project is a part of a $19 billion housing investment by the BC government. Danny Sydenham, President and CEO of Helijet, British Columbia Premier David Eby, Sky Carapetti, Sales Director at Beta Technologies, and J.R. Hammond, Executive Director of the Canadian Advanced Air Mobility, will be having an important announcement about new electric aviation technology that will be positively beneficial to communities, residents, and visitors throughout the province of British Columbia. The announcement will be held at Helijet's Victoria Harbour Heliport tomorrow at 1:30 p.m. Victoria time. Friends star Matthew Perry was mourned on social media by show creators, co-stars, and famous fans. They include Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and his mom on the sitcom Friends, as well as Adele. Perry played Chandler Bing on NBC's Friends for 10 seasons. He was found dead at his Los Angeles home on Saturday. Trudeau, who attended elementary school with Perry while their parents worked together, thanked Perry for the laughs. Adele, who didn't know the Friends star personally, took time at her Las Vegas show to address the loss. The new Slovak government has announced a massive deployment of police and armed forces along the border with Hungary to prevent and growing numbers of migrants entering the country. Prime Minister Robert Fico says the move is planned to start late on Monday. Fico says that illegal migration has to be under control, otherwise persons linked to terrorist structures could enter the country. He says he will personally inspect the situation at border later Monday. His government has sworn in on Wednesday after his leftist Smer or Direction party won the September 30 parliamentary election. Authorities say Cyprus is doubling the existing 1,153 person capacity of its main migrant reception camp, as the island nation prepares for potentially a large influx of people if the crisis in neighboring Israel and Gaza escalates. The Pornara reception camp on the outskirts of the capital Nicosia will see an increase in staffing to adequately provide needed care to new arrivals and expedite asylum application processing. Cypriot Interior Minister Konstantinos. And that's it for your news headlines at 10:30.
Stay tuned for more on BCIT's 1680 The Crow.
Everything is changing to digital. Everything is online. People aren't just waiting for the 6 o'clock news anymore. People want their news right now. They want to be able to go onto their smartphone, onto the internet, and see the news that they want to see.
Vancouver is growing at, a really rapid rate, the Lower Mainland even, and with the tools that we're given here, we're able to cover all of that.
Welcome to BCIT Magazine. I'm Radhika Sikakane.
In the program, they really leave it up to you. I mean, the help is there when you need it, figuring out how to use the programs like Premiere, Audition, and figuring out how to use the cameras. But it's up to you to sort of experiment and figure out what you can do when you go out in the field.
They brought candles and flowers to remember the student who lost her life yesterday.
Theresa May says the international community condemns Moscow.
They really make sure that you know the basics and you are able to put out a quality product.
I'm Brady Tretanero.
And I'm Radhika Sikakane. Thank you for tuning in to BCIT Magazine.
Too fast because my heart is going a bit too fast, so I'm going to slow it down a bit. Hey
We're like middlemen straight from the creator making these moves.
We're all kind of misfits.
Something to look forward to, you know? I feel like it's important. Like usually I'll just be like, grab my arm, and then you just kind of like pull them like a T-bar, you know?
I think skateboarding is a piece of medicine in itself.
We're just doing the work in hopes that eventually we'll have chapters of other nations skate youth in other parts of Turtle Island.
It's nations, skate yours.
Nation Skate Youth started in my living room, organically. I was asked to go to Fort St. John to talk about mental health and bring skateboarding. I didn't know who to bring, and the first person I thought of was Joe Buffalo. Big inspiration in my life.
Joe came up with the name. It didn't really click at first, but after a while we made the logo and everything, and it all just came together so fast.
I think one of my main goals when I started Nations was to get more skate parks on reserves. We realized that this would be a bigger thing, to not just go to one community. We wanted to go to all the communities.
We all wanted to, create something that was like a youth program to help empower like youths through skateboarding. It's a way of getting yourself out of your own shell. And I feel like in a lot of First Nations communities, there's not a lot to do in those communities. It's very small, and sometimes you feel like you're trapped. A lot of them are really nervous when we first meet them. And I feel like when we always start with a talking circle. So it's like we tell our stories, and we kind of we try to make them feel comfortable, and tell them why we're there, and what we're gonna do in the day.
Everyone here is a new beginner or has skated before, and we're here to help each other. If you fall down, take a breath, get back up.
Everything's that way in the beginning, you know what I mean? You're gonna feel out of place when you're beginning, you know what I mean? That's normal. But once you meet your crowd, and that's half the battle with us growing up, is trying to find your people so that they grow with them from a young age as family members, and then they grow as skateboarders.
Gives you like a sense of identity too, you know? Like every time I went to school, I'd always be like, I can't wait to go skate after, having that, something to look forward to, you know? I feel like it's important when you're a kid.
Especially having a brother. It's easier to influence each other to do things, and you progress faster because of that. And it's like always having a friend there, and always having that safety net in a sense.
Skating is something that we grew up doing together. I feel like that kept us close, Skateboarding is part of my identity, and my family is part of my identity.
Just let skateboarding do its thing. It's that rich, All we do is connect and instill that, plant that seed. It's something I never had growing up,
Seeing Joe skateboard at his level and hearing that he went to the residential school and the way that kids oh, my dad went to residential school. Oh, my brother did. Oh, my mom did. They start to relate. And I think that, it's been a healing journey. Skateboarding, like I said, will take you out of all the negative, all the darkness that you feel. And once you get on a skateboard, that's an opportunity for you just to focus on something. and be present.
Like even in my community, there's suicides like every year, and it's really sad because you lose knowledge keepers, you lose, you know, momentum, like you lose just youth that have a lot of potential. And I remember Rosie, that was the biggest reason why she wanted to start Nations.
You know, to talk about alcohol, drugs, and suicide, because it's happening and they're so young and they see it and they're experiencing it. And just to let them know, like, that they're valued.
It kind of stops that intergenerational trauma because it's a lot of self-doubt, and skateboarding kind of gives you that, you know, that recognition that like it's not, yeah, it just gives you that freedom to express yourself.
Hell yeah.
So today I was skateboarding on the skate park and I was just learning. I was a little nervous at first, but then I got the hang of it. He made me feel happy. Okay, can we do that again?
Yeah, let's do it again. Okay, I'll go on this side of you.
Because he is a good skateboarder and he taught me how to do some tricks. Apple turnover and like tic-tac.
When you have someone believing in you and cheering you on, like that whole feeling, and that's how I try to do with Nations, you know, like you got it, you're there, and the just like the inspiring and like the empowerment you get from that, it's a good feeling. We want the youth to be their best selves. We want them to know that everything isn't going to be easy. But once they start skateboarding and you can see that they're pushing on their own and they're able to do tricks right away, and I think that's something that is so positive, and you know, it's gonna create leadership and create community where there hasn't been. What I've seen at Nations that makes me proud, when I ask a youth how to count in their language or say hello or thank you in their language, and they can tell me.
So kikiu means eagle, musquasses means bear, kukam means auntie, grandma, musha means grandpa, and tuk-tuk means duck.
What's your favorite word in Cree?
Eagle because I'm an eagle.
In so many ways, I was trying to find myself in skateboarding, like the community skateboarding has, which has been really fulfilling in a lot of ways. But I think connecting to my culture, you really do feel that connection with your ancestors when you do that stuff. I feel like with Nations, we're able to use skateboarding as like a tool to empower youth and to like give them, I know Rosie always said it, but like, you know, be proud of who you are and be proud of where you come from. And I feel like it rings so true in so many of the communities that we go to.
To be proud of who you are, be proud of where you come from, not to be ashamed. I feel like when you start telling them that at a young age, it's going to change the way they look at themselves, the way they carry on their culture and their traditions, the way that they will have that close relationship with their grandparents, and to learn. I know for me, I've heard stories that broke me, that completely broke me. And it made me mad, it made me angry, it made me sad, it made me pissed right off at the government. But when you're around youth, you know, you want to show them the hope. You definitely want to show them that there's hope out there.
Because it's needed. Someone's got to be here for the youth. Someone's got to be that person, that older brother, older sister needed, that kind of needed, you know? There's nothing like it. So that's why we figured give back. I'm here to teach you. You're not going to fall. I'm going to hold you, okay? Give me your hands. We're just getting started, man.
having self-determination to be better and to create that community, I think, is something that we want to pass down to the youth as well. Show them what's possible.
Look, Joanna, hey, hey, look, Joanna, hey, hey, CGLA, hey, hey, CGLA, hey, hey, RGLA.
Everything is changing to digital. Everything is online. People aren't just waiting for the 6 o'clock news anymore. People want their news right now. They want to be able to go onto their smartphone, onto the internet, and see the news that they want to see.
Vancouver is growing at, a really rapid rate, the Lower Mainland even, and with the tools that we're given here, we're able to cover all of that.
Welcome to BCIT Magazine. I'm Radhika Sikikane.
In the program, they really leave it up to you. I mean, the help is there when you need it, figuring out how to use the programs like Premiere, Audition, and figuring out how to use the cameras. But it's up to you to sort of experiment and figure out what you can do when you go out in the field.
They brought candles and flowers to remember the student who lost her life yesterday.
Theresa May says the international community condemns Moscow.
They really make sure that you know the basics and you are able to put out a quality product.
I'm Brady Tretnero.
And I'm Radhika Sikikane. Thank you for tuning in to BCIT Magazine.
everything is changing to digital. Everything is online. People aren't just waiting for the 6 o'clock news anymore. People want their news right now. They want to be able to go onto their smartphone, onto the internet, and see the news that they want to see.
Vancouver is growing at, a really rapid rate, the Lower Mainland even, and with the tools that we're given here, we're able to cover all of that.
Welcome to BCIT Magazine. I'm Radhika Sikakane.
In the program, they really leave it up to you. I mean, the help is there when you need it, figuring out how to use the programs like Premiere, Audition, and figuring out how to use the cameras. But it's up to you to sort of experiment and figure out what you can do when you go out in the field.
They brought candles and flowers to remember the student who lost her life.
From the Broadcast Center at BCIT's Burnaby Campus, this is All Talk Radio. You're listening to 1680 The Crow.
Good morning and thanks for joining us. I'm Jaguars Lawley with your 11 o'clock sports update. The Vancouver Canucks are set to finish a 3-game homestand Tuesday night when they host the Nashville Predators. The Canucks have split the first 2 games of their homestand, defeating the Blues 5-0 on Friday, but losing to the Rangers on Saturday in overtime after a nail-biting contest. Nashville comes into this one having defeated the Toronto Maple Leafs in overtime Saturday night. Puck drop is set for 7 p.m. local time at Rogers Arena. The Colorado Avalanche experienced a big setback last night, losing 4-0 to the Buffalo Sabres. This defeat concluded their 3-game trip where they were shut out in back-to-back games. It's worth noting that this loss also put an end to their impressive NHL record of 15 consecutive road wins. Avalanche coach Jared Bednar pointed out that the Sabres outperformed his team in this game.
No excuses. I mean, we got to be better taking care of the puck through the neutral zone, and we got to continue to work to try and create those high-danger chances, and I thought they did a better job of that tonight than we did.
Moving over to basketball, Trae Young scored 20 points to lead 8 players in double figures as the Atlanta Hawks limited Damian Lillard to 6 points while routing the listless Milwaukee Bucks 127-110 last night for their first victory of the season. Lillard says the Hawks simply just played with more spark.
I think it was just a tough game. They were a more aggressive team. They played more physical than we did. And, just early season, bad game. We didn't play well on either end of the floor. And, you got to give them credit for the way they came out. They were physical. They were disruptive.
The Toronto Raptors are set to welcome the Portland Trail Blazers to Scotiabank Arena tonight. The Blazers, led by newly acquired center DeAndre Ayton, are off to a rough start on the season with 3 losses and no wins. The Raptors, on the other hand, opened up the season with a victory, but then suffered 2 defeats, a close loss in overtime to the Bulls, and a 114-107 defeat to the Philadelphia 76ers on Saturday. Lack of energy or tired, whatever might be the case, but we just did not have the juice that stretch there, end quote, Raptors head coach Darko Irakovic said of the stretch. Tip-off is set for 7:30 p.m. tonight local time in Toronto. Steph Curry had 24 points with 4 3-pointers down the stretch, and Klay Thompson added 19 points to lead the Golden State Warriors to a 106-95 win over the Houston Rockets last night. Here is the radio call on 95.7 The Game as Curry makes a step-back 3-point shot in the fourth quarter.
Draymond screens. Curry behind the back, moving Tate aside. Now driving on Şengün. Step out for another 3. He's got 9 straight points on 3 threes. Number 30 putting on a clinic here. It's 97-89. The Warriors are on top.
Russell Wilson threw 3 touchdown passes. Justin Simmons had 2 of Denver's 5 takeaways as the Broncos stymied an ill Patrick Mahomes in snapping their 16-game losing streak to the Kansas City Chiefs 24-9. Mahomes says he can't get too upset about their streak against the Broncos coming to an end.
It kind of is what it is. I mean, it's probably going to happen at some point, but we try to do whatever we can to bounce back. That's all you can do. You got to learn from the mistakes that you made this game. Try to be better going into Germany this next week. And kind of get the momentum back in our favor. Obviously, today wasn't our day, but we can continue to get better and better.
The 2023 World Series continues today with Game 3 scheduled tonight, featuring the Texas Rangers against the Arizona Diamondbacks at Chase Field. The series began with the Rangers winning Game 1 in extra innings and the Diamondbacks securing a decisive victory in Game 2. As it stands, the best-of-7 series is currently tied at 1-1, and it's essentially a best-of-5 series now given the change in location to Arizona. Historically, when teams take a 2-1 lead in a best-of-7 series, they have managed to win over 70% of the time. In simpler terms, This Game 3 can be seen as a pivotal moment in the series. That's all for your 11 o'clock sports update. I'm Jagraj Lally. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay listening to 1680 The Crow.
Stay tuned for more on BCIT's 1680 The Crow.
Everything is changing to digital. Everything is online. People aren't just waiting for the 6 o'clock news anymore. People want their news right now. They want to be able to go onto their smartphone, onto the internet, and see the news that they want to see.
Vancouver is growing at a really rapid rate, the Lower Mainland even, and with the tools that we're given here, we're able to cover all of that.
Welcome to BCIT Magazine. I'm Radhika Sikakane.
In the program, they really leave it up to you. I mean, the help is there when you need it, figuring out how to use the programs like Premiere, Audition, and figuring out how to use the cameras. But it's up to you to sort of experiment and figure out what you can do when you go out in the field.
They brought candles and flowers to remember the student who lost her life yesterday.
Theresa May says the international community condemns Moscow.
They really make sure that you know the basics and you are able to put out a quality product.
I'm Brady Tretnero.
And I'm Radhika Sikakane. Thank you for tuning in to BCIT Magazine.